Holidays after SHTF. What to do? I've got you covered. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. Our channel focuses on preparedness, and a big part of that is emergency food storage. One thing I love doing is putting together emergency meal kits, otherwise known as meals in a bag. These are bags you put together that contain everything you need to make a complete meal, all shelf stable and ready to go. These are great for preparedness for a couple of reasons. One, they help you organize some of your emergency food into meals. Many people stock up on things like beans and rice and canned veggies, things they think they're supposed to store, but they don't really have any idea how to turn those things into appetizing meals. Or when it comes right down to it, they're missing a few key ingredients to make complete meals from those ingredients. The second mistake many people make is overestimating how far their food storage will stretch. Most people don't realize what a month or 6 months or a year's worth of food storage really looks like if they have to depend upon it 100%. Organizing meal kits can help you visualize it in terms of days. Even if you just have 1 or 2 weeks worth of meals like this prepared, because you can do breakfast, lunch, and dinners, you know you at least have enough brainless meals put together to carry you that far without having to put too much thought and energy into it. At some point, I got the idea to put together some holiday-themed meal kits. Emergencies, disasters, power outages, and even personal emergencies like medical or financial problems, they can happen at any time without warning. If there's a holiday or special occasion that happens to be during one of these times, just having something to keep a small sense of tradition and make the day just a little bit special can go a long way towards boosting morale. A few months ago, in November, I believe, I showed how I put together meal kits for Thanksgiving and Christmas-themed dinners, complete with desserts. This time, I've got a couple of new additions to the holiday lineup with dinners for Easter and St. Patty's Day. And then as a bonus, I'm going to show you how to put together a super simple birthday bag so you can whip up a quick and easy birthday cake whenever you need one. These are also great donation items for homeless shelters and women's shelters. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. First, I'm going to do a take on a classic corned beef and cabbage boiled dinner for St. Patty's Day. This is one of my all-time favorite meals. Okay, so for our St. Patrick's Day meal, this is going to be, of course, a shelf-stable version of a corned beef and cabbage boiled dinner. So I have my corned beef here, canned corned beef, and I've got my cabbage. I've got to tell you, this is my first time trying this canned seasoned cabbage, and I was really impressed. We really actually liked it a lot better than I thought I would. I've also got some whole white potatoes canned, and I've got some sliced carrots. And that's all we need for this meal. This is going to be super simple and super quick. Now for this meal, since it is a simple meal, I'm only going to need the smaller size of bags. There are 2 different sizes of bags that I buy for these meals because depending on how, complicated the meal is and how many ingredients it has, sometimes it needs a larger bag. If you only want to use one size of bag, I would just stick with the larger size because you can fit anything in the larger size, but they won't all fit in the smaller size. You don't have to use bags like this. You can use large Ziploc bags like the 2-gallon size Ziploc bags. I have found bags similar to this at Dollar Tree paper gift bags that I have used before. So anything that works for you to contain your meals would be a great choice. Okay, I'm just going to start by adding my corned beef and my cabbage, potatoes, and carrots. And here it is, all ready to go on the shelf. Okay, now it's time to fix this meal up, and this goes together so fast and easy, I'm telling you. The hardest part of making this meal is going to be opening up this stupid can of corned beef and getting the meat out in one piece so that I can slice it up. Everything else is easy peasy, but speaking of that, this comes with its own can opener. The other cans that I got, they don't have the pop top. So obviously always make sure that you have manual can openers in your home, in your emergency gear. If you aren't certain you're going to have one, or if you're not sure where you'll be using these bags, if you might take them grab and go style, you might want to throw a little P38 can opener right inside the bag. I do that a lot because you can buy those super cheap and get a whole collection of them and throw them in the bags. All right, there we go. Okay, so now all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut this up into slices. I think I usually get 5 or 6 slices out of it. All right, so I got 6 slices out of this. This meat, the can of meat says it's 4 servings. We ended up getting about 3 servings out of this whole meal, but that was feeding Mr. Wicked Prepared, who's a really big eater. So I would say 3 to 4 servings out of this if you just do 1 can of each. So if you have a larger family, you can double that. And of course, that's going to depend on how much your family eats. If you have a really big eater like Mr. Wicked Prepared, then you might get 3 servings out of this, 2 or 3 servings. But I am going to be preparing this on my butane emergency stove. This is my go-to for cooking indoors in an emergency. Butane stoves are generally considered safe for cooking indoors. They are used in a lot of instances like catering, and a lot of Asian countries, they use them indoors. A lot of the ones that you will get are going to have a warning on them. So if you really care about that, you're going to have to shop around to find one that says it's okay for indoor use, but they're generally considered safe for indoor use. I've always used mine, never had an issue. That being said, anytime you're using alternative appliances like this or fuels, I always recommend having an additional carbon monoxide detector with a digital readout that tells you the levels, and have it right handy. So that's always part of our emergency gear. But you can get one of these stoves for around $30 or even less if you don't care about getting the Coleman brand. Walmart, Target, places like that. I recommend everyone have one of these stoves for cooking indoors in a grid down emergency. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay this meat right in this pan. So now I'm just going to go ahead and turn on my burner. And I'm going to have this pretty high because we just want to kind of fry and crisp up the bottom of this pretty quickly. And then we're going to turn it over and crisp up the other side. They get nice and brown and crispy. While this is crisping, I'm going to open up all the other vegetables, and I'm not going to drain anything because we're going to use all the liquid from all these cans, which is a really good practice in an emergency because you don't want to waste any water or liquid. That's a precious resource. So this is all going to go into making our final dish. I'm going to open these cans because once this is fried and crispy on both sides, we're going to finish off the dish super quick. Now I gotta tell you, I was pretty impressed with this canned cabbage because I was sitting here thinking about holiday meals, and I thought about the canned corned beef, and I thought, oh, if only they made canned cabbage, I could do corned beef and cabbage for St. Patrick's Day. So I searched on the internet, and lo and behold, they do make canned cabbage, but I was a little bit unsure of how it would be, if we would like it. So I bought it, and I showed it in my recent haul. And a lot of people said they really liked it. And when we tried it in this meal, we really liked it too. And the most impressive part is Mr. Wicked Prepared is not a cabbage lover. Usually if I make a regular boiled dinner with, fresh cabbage, he won't eat the cabbage. He'll eat everything else but not the cabbage. But he ate this cabbage and he said he really liked it. So I thought that was impressive. All right, so here's what we're going to do now. This is all pretty well browned. I'm going to turn this off real quick so I can talk for a minute without burning it. But there's a couple of things you can do here. You can either take this meat out and then add the vegetables, cook them up in the skillet, and then serve it all together. Or you can just pour the vegetables right in and heat it with the meat. Now, when I did this before, I poured the vegetables right in with the meat and let it heat that way and then served it. And some of the meat broke up because this meat is not really, you can see it doesn't hold together super well. So some of the meat broke up into smaller chunks. So my first thought was, next time I do this, I'm going to take the meat out, put the vegetables in, and heat them separately. But when we were eating it, we actually kind of really liked it with the meat broken up into chunks, mixed in with the vegetables. And it almost made like a kind of a stew almost, or a soup. So you could do it either way, or you could try it, both ways and see which way you prefer. I think today I'm going to take out a couple pieces of meat so that I can show that way. And then I'm going to put the vegetables in and heat it with the rest of the meat so you can kind of see both ways. So I'm just going to grab out a couple of these best looking pieces of meat. I'm going to go ahead and turn the burner back on. And I'm just going to go ahead and dump in these 3 cans of veggies like I mentioned with all the water. I'm just going to kind of spread this out gently so I don't break the meat up too much. Now that cabbage has a really good flavor. It's pretty strong flavor. in the cabbage and in the juice that's in the can. So with that additional water from those additional veggies, there's no extra salt and there's no broth or anything like that, but it actually comes out tasting just perfect. I don't think you need to add salt and pepper or anything like that. If you wanted to, you could certainly add little salt and pepper packets into your bag, but this was just perfect for us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this down a little bit and just put the lid on just until all the veggies are warmed through. That's all it needs. Once all the veggies are warmed through, it's going to be ready to serve. All right, so now this has been simmering for probably like 5 minutes, not very long. You really just need time to heat the potatoes through because that's what's going to take the longest. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. And what I like to do is just use like a slotted spoon to serve this so that it drains some of the juice off, but I don't worry about getting some of the juice in there with it because that's actually pretty good. When I was a kid and I remember my mom making a corned beef bowl dinner, I feel like I sometimes remember her just scooping right out of the pot into a bowl and putting some of the pot liquor in the bowl with the food. In fact, if you wanted to, especially if this was an emergency situation and like I mentioned, liquid is at a premium and water, you could serve this like a soup or a stew because it's actually really good that way. This broth is really good. So I just like to serve it out like this. See both ways. So this is how this meal looks, and I tell you what, it is super tasty. For a special St. Patty's Day dessert, I'm going to do a no-bake grasshopper cookie crunch cheesecake. All right, so what I've got for this dessert is I've got a chocolate cookie crust, one of the pre-made chocolate crusts. I've got a box of the no-bake cheesecake here, and I'm going to open this box up, and all I'm going to take out of it is the packet of filling mix because this has 2 packets inside. One is the filling mix, the actual cheesecake, and the other is just graham cracker crumbs that you are supposed to use to make a crust. But I use graham cracker crumbs for other things like magic cookie bars, so I save those and use them for something else when I'm using the mix for something like this. I also have, this is some instant milk powder. This is 1/3 cup. I put it into one of these 1/4 pint little jars. These are perfect for holding things like this. It's the perfect amount. And then of course I have a bottle of water back here. So this is going to make the milk that we need to mix up the cheesecake filling. And then finally I have a package of these mint Oreos. I'm not going to use the whole package, so I do have them in a Ziploc baggie because what we do use I'm going to crush. So I can crush them inside that baggie, and then if we have leftovers, they can also be stored inside the bag, although these packages usually have a sealing little strip on them. So, and then I also included a little bottle of green food coloring because I have a ton of these little bottles of cheap food coloring laying around from over the years, and so this is totally optional, but just to make it a little bit more green. But of course the Oreos do have the green filling, so you definitely don't need to use that food coloring. All right, let's get started and put this together. All right, I don't think I need to show you how we put these all in the bag because it's the same idea with every single one. It's just going to be a matter of deciding if you need a bigger bag or a smaller bag. If you watch my emergency meal kit videos often, you know I usually include a card in a CD pocket on the front of the bag that gives the ingredients and the recipe instructions. But let's get started making the St. Patty's Day dessert. So first, I'm going to mix up the cheesecake filling. And for that, I'm going to need 1.5 cups of the water that I have. All right, there is 1.5 cups. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my bowl. And I'm going to add my instant milk powder. And I'm going to go ahead and whisk this together. I think I should be able to do this all with a whisk. And if not, I can go to my rotary hand beater. Because we are trying to make this SHTF friendly and do everything without electricity if possible. So now I'm going to go ahead and add in my filling mix. I just take this bag right out of that box that it came in, and I just put the bag into my meal kit. And get this whisking. And I think at this point I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of green food coloring in just to make it a little bit festive and green. I'm going to need a little more than that. Once again, this is totally not a necessary ingredient, obviously. I could even add more than that. That just kind of made it look yellow, but we'll see how it looks when we add the Oreos with the green filling. So while this is thickening up, I'm going to go ahead and get the Oreos crushed. I'm going to start with just one row of the Oreos and see if that's enough. Smell good. And I know plenty of people who will be super happy to eat anything we have left over. Now keep in mind, something like the cookies and a dessert like this aren't going to have a really long shelf life, so you're not going to want to keep bags like this on the shelf for years. But every 6 months to a year, we tend to rotate through things like this, either making the meal or the dessert and using it on a camping trip or just a busy night, or we might just rotate through, pick out the parts that are going to, expire a little bit more quickly and replace them with a fresh package. Of course, also keeping in mind that you do have considerably longer than the best by date that they print on those packages. All right, you can crush this with whatever you wanted. I am just going to use the flat side of my meat mallet. This is clean. I think that's pretty good. All right, you can see this filling is very thick now. All right, let's go ahead and put some of these crumbs in. Fold them right in. I think we can do more than that. I guess this can take the whole sleeve. I thought I would save some for the topping. Sprinkle some on the top, but I think we can add it all in. All right, so now let's get this crust ready to go. The great thing about these is that they're already in a disposable pie pan. They have a little cover that you can put right over it when the pie is done, and then you can throw the whole thing away when you are finished with it. Of course, if it was a long-term emergency situation, you would probably want to be very frugal and wash out aluminum things like this. But all right, so now I'm just going to go ahead and put this filling right into our pie shell. Okay, now here is the catch. Now at this point, you can refrigerate this and it will set up even firmer. So if you do have electricity, obviously you can put it in your fridge. I'm just going to put this little top right back on it. If you don't have electricity, maybe you have a cooler that you use for emergencies, or even we have a plug-in one that we use for camping that we plug into our power stations. For us, in Maine here in March, it is cold outside. So outside is our fridge. In fact, that's where I'm going to go put this right now, is right outside to cool off. If you don't have anything like that, find the coolest spot in your house. It might be down cellar or something like that. Other than that, you could eat this just as is. You can see that it's not runny or anything like that. You could totally eat this as is. When I go to serve this, I will take some more of these Oreos and maybe cut them in half, maybe make a little design on the top or stick one into each slice as I serve it. Something like that, just to make it look a little more fancy. Another thing you could do if you wanted to add to this recipe is you could throw a box of Dream Whip, or you wouldn't even need the whole box. There's 2 packets in each of these boxes. And if you go and watch my video where I did the Thanksgiving and Christmas meals, I did whip up some of the Dream Whip. I used some instant milk powder and some vanilla powder, and I used my rotary hand beater and whipped it up really quickly and had some whipped topping for the dessert. So if you want to add a little extra special touch to this, you can go ahead and do that. I usually just take out the one envelope, write the instructions, what I need to do on the envelope, and add a little packet, like a little Mylar bag like this, with the milk powder and vanilla powder. So that's another option. This is a really great shelf-stable option for a whipped topping. I love to keep these on hand for that reason. So I'm going to go ahead and refrigerate this in my outdoor refrigerator until it's ready to serve. All right, here is the Grasshopper Oreo cheesecake, and I got to tell you, it is delish. The chocolate crust didn't really hold up very well. I don't know if I mistreated it on the way home from the grocery store, or if it's just the brand of crust I used. It just kind of crumbled a little bit, but that's no big deal. This pie still tastes delicious. Next, I'm going to put together our special Easter feast. For our family, that means ham. We always have ham on Easter. So for our Easter meal, of course, the star of the Easter meal is going to be ham, because we always have ham on Easter. Of course, this is a canned ham, and it's definitely not going to be the same as a real ham, but it's going to do a good job of helping keep the tradition. Of course, with our ham, we would tend to have scallop potatoes or au gratin potatoes, so I've got a box of mix for that here. Of course, if you would rather do mashed potatoes, you could do that. This mix does call for some butter and some milk. We're not going to worry about the butter. I'm sure a lot of people could tell you you could also do it without the milk, but I do want to have the milk. So what I've done is included a little packet of instant milk powder. And all I did is I just took this little Mylar bag that I have, and I added 2 tablespoons of the instant milk, which is just a little bit more than what would be called for to make a half a cup of milk, which is what the box requires. I've got a couple of things to serve alongside. I've got a can of peas because we like to have peas with our Easter ham dinner. If you would rather, or in addition, you could always do some asparagus, because sometimes I like to have asparagus with Easter dinner as well. These little bottles I actually get at Dollar Tree. You might want to throw 2 of them in there. They're not very big if you were to use that option. I've also got some pineapple because we love to have pineapple with our ham, and I have got a box here of Just Add Water biscuit mix to have some biscuits to go along with the meal. And then of course I've got 2 bottles of water here. I've got the 16.9 regular size bottle, and I've got an 8-ounce bottle, and this should be enough water to do the potatoes and to do the biscuits. Now let's go ahead and get this into our bag. Okay, I've got my bag here. These are the larger of the 2 bag sizes that I use, and I did label it Easter dinner. Gonna add my potatoes, gonna add my canned ham, going to add my pineapple. Sometimes it's easiest to put your biggest things in first. Gonna go ahead and add my can of peas, my larger bottle of water, and my smaller bottle of water. Gonna go ahead and add my milk powder and my box of biscuit mix. There are other types of Just Add Water biscuit mix. This is another one that I use quite often, so you could use whichever kind you want. This kind calls for a half a cup of water, same as the other one, so it would be equal. And now our Easter dinner bag is ready to go on the shelf. Now the first part of the Easter dinner that I'm going to start to prepare is the potatoes. This is going to have to bake. Now it's important, if you have something that needs to bake in your meal, that you have a way to bake if the power's out and you don't have a gas oven. There are several different methods that can be used for baking off-grid. We often bake in a Dutch oven with charcoal or campfire coals. We also have a camp stove. We have one that can sit on top of a camp stove burner, but they also have some that have their own propane source and just work as its own oven, and those are outdoor appliances. But there is another new type of oven called the Ember oven that can be used indoors. And of course, there's also a sun oven. I know a lot of people who have a sun oven and love it. I haven't gotten one yet, but I've heard really good reviews. However, for this potato mix, they do have some stovetop instructions on the side here. So if you didn't have a way to bake this, you could use the stovetop instructions and just do it in a pot on your emergency burner. If you wanted, you could also include a full pan. One about this size would probably be just the right size for the potatoes. I'm going to go ahead and use a regular casserole dish just so I'm not wasting a disposable one. Once again, if you have nonstick spray, you can go ahead and use it, but it's not necessary. Now, this calls for baking it at 450 degrees, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my oven on. That's a pretty high temperature that might be kind of hard to achieve with an alternative oven, but I think this recipe is going to be like a lot of the other ones and be very forgiving. Just have to cook a little bit longer if you cook it at a lower temp. It also calls for using boiling water. So I'm going to take a small pot that I'm going to be using for the peas, and I'm going to go ahead and boil our water in that. For this recipe, I'm going to be testing out this induction burner that we recently got to try, and I'm really excited about this, and I've got it plugged in to my Bluetti power station. I'm curious, induction burners use a lot less power because of the way that they heat. They magnetically transfer the heat to your pots and pans. And so I want to see if this would be a viable option for us to use off of one of our power stations for a cooking source. Because of course the power stations I can recharge with solar, so I can recharge them over and over and over again, so I wouldn't have to worry as much about running out of fuel. Now for an induction burner, you have to use a pot that a magnet will stick to very strongly, which this one does. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and heat 2 cups of water for the potatoes in this. Okay, so that heated that water to boiling super, super fast, and it only used about 2% of my power station battery. So now I'm going to be going ahead and I need to put the milk, boiling water, and sauce mix into my casserole. Now I need a half a cup of milk, so I've got a half a cup of cold water here from one of my bottles. I'm just going to put that in there, and I'm just going to go ahead and stir in my milk powder. And now I'm going to add my boiling water and my sauce mix. I'm just going to get this all whisked together. And now we're just going to stir in the potatoes. And then this is just going to bake uncovered. It says 25 minutes or until it's golden brown. It's going to thicken up, the potatoes are going to soften. So the rest of this meal is going to be pretty self-explanatory. I'll just run through it really quickly. And I just want to point out here that this does have instructions for baking at different temperatures for different amounts of times. That would be if you're trying to roast it with your meat. So this is definitely a forgiving recipe. And you can always increase these if you have a larger family. Just do, you know, a double package of each thing. And so the nice thing is that the biscuits call for being baked at the same temperature as those potatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up. They don't bake as long. So now that the potatoes are in the oven, we can mix this up and put them right in with it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start these biscuits. Now this does call for half a cup of water. So I've gone ahead and measured out a half a cup of water from what we had left in our bottle. So this is all the water that we're going to need. So anything else that's left is going to be extra that someone can drink, unless our biscuits end up too dry and we need a little bit more water here. But I don't think that they will, but it's better to use less and be able to add more, because if you're doing it from a meal in a bag, you're not going to have extra flour or anything else to add if you were to need that. And that's also the reason why I'm going to do these as drop biscuits rather than rolled biscuits, even though I prefer rolled biscuits, because with rolled biscuits, you would need to have a little bit of flour for kneading it and rolling it out. So I do think we might need a tiny tad more water here. Let's just get in there with our hands a little bit. Now we could do these as drop biscuits, or we could do these as cutout biscuits. I think I'm going to do kind of a little bit in between. Just kind of form them like that. All right, so these are supposed to go in for 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and stick them in right now because those potatoes have been in a while. Now this bowl actually came out pretty clean. So I think if I go wipe this out with a paper towel, that I can actually serve my peas in this bowl. Because remember, if we are in an emergency situation, the less dishes, the better. All right, so now what we've got left to do is to fry up the ham and heat up the peas. Now, once again, make sure you have a manual can opener handy, or throw a little military one in the bag. I could have used a much smaller pot for the peas and the water, but this, I couldn't find my smaller one that would stick a magnet to it. But so those are going to be ready to heat. I'm just going to go ahead and slice up the ham so that we can heat the slices. That's just going to be the fastest way to do this. Everything we would need to make these meals if we had to use only what was included inside of our emergency cooking kit. The last thing I'm going to do here is go ahead and open up this pineapple. I'm going to serve the pineapple right out of the can because there's no need to use another dish. I got to tell you, I'm super impressed with this little stove. Whoops, let's get this turned back on. I am super impressed with this stove. I'm just finding out right now, though, that you can only get a total of 9 power. 9 is the max power on one burner, and if you're using both burners, it's going to be, the numbers are going to add up to 9. So if I put this above 6, that one goes down. So you can use one burner higher and one burner lower. Of course, if you only had one burner, like you're using an emergency butane stove, like I often use, you could just fry up the ham and move it off the burner and then heat the peas really quickly, vice versa, one or the other. You could do it all one at a time and it would work just fine. Okay, this is hot and ready, and there's our biscuits. Biscuits are done. Now, of course, this being a multi-course meal, you could cook all these things separately. You could do the biscuits and they could be cooling while you were doing, you know, these other things are all pretty quick. So it would be really quick to do these all one at a time and get this meal thrown together. Now, if you like to have some kind of glaze on your ham, I have used these McDonald's honey mustard packets in the past for a glaze on like a ham steak or something. So you could throw in a couple of these. You could throw in some pineapple preserves or even a jar of cherry sauce for ham if you have some of that. The good thing about the little packets is that you'd have just enough and you wouldn't have any left over. But that's just something that you could do if that's how you prefer to have your ham. And now, of course, our potatoes are done. They're nice and toasty brown on the top. They will thicken up a little bit as they sit and cool off. And then we will be ready to serve. And of course, while we're on the topic of packets, if you have any packets like these, jams, jellies, honey, anything like that that you've collected from restaurants, or that you've purchased. You could throw these in if you like to have something on your biscuits. I have also these packets of ghee. I bought these from Amazon. I've never seen this at a restaurant. They do have butter packets at the restaurants, but I don't think those are shelf stable. These are shelf stable. So this would be kind of similar to having some butter. If you wanted some butter on your biscuits, you can go ahead and add some things like these to your bags. You can add salt and pepper packets to any of these, anything you might like with your meal or the person that you give these to. Okay, we're ready to serve our Easter dinner. There is our Easter dinner feast. And for my Easter dessert, I'm doing a simple no-bake cookie kind of treat, peanut butter bird nests. I had a different dessert planned that was going to be amazing and elaborate and fancy, and it used all of these wonderful ingredients. I had coconut and coconut cake, pineapple, lemon, a cheesecake pudding layer. It was going to be spectacular, but it was complicated and it needed to be baked, so I decided to go with something a little simpler this time, but I'm sure I will show you this dessert at some point in the future. The ingredients for the Easter dessert are going to be, I've got some peanut butter here. It's supposed to be about 3/4 of a cup of peanut butter. So this container is probably super close to 3/4 of a cup. Any container you can find of peanut butter that is around 3/4 of a cup. I've got a bag of white baking morsels. This is an 11-ounce bag. I've got a can of the crispy chow mein noodles. Now the recipe calls for an 8-ounce can of chow mein noodles. These are the only can of chow mein noodles I've ever seen. This is what I usually buy. These are 5 ounces, so I'm going to go ahead and throw in a second can. Even the bags that we have at our store are 12 ounces, so I'm going to go ahead and use 2 of these 5-ounce cans. And I've also got, this is 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar. I did label it. I put it in this little Mylar bag. You could put this into, you know, a little mason jar like we used in the other recipe. You could put this into, if you have baby food jars laying around, small baby food jars, those work perfect. Or a bag like this. And if I wanted to make sure this was going to store for a very long time, I could add a very small oxygen absorber. I could heat seal this bag, anything like that. And then I've got a bag of the Cadbury mini eggs. These are little candy eggs. You could also do something like the Reese's Pieces eggs. Now these candies, they'll definitely last a year. I buy these all the time on clearance and save them for the next year. Something like this, I would swap the candies out probably every year if you keep this meal on your shelf. We like to rotate these kind of meals and use them occasionally and replace them with fresh. But the shelf life you're going to get out of the meal is going to depend on the ingredients inside. For example, the St. Patty's Day meal, it was all canned ingredients. That meal itself could last for years and years and years on the shelf and not need any replacing. If you had a meal like a chili, say, where most of your ingredients were canned, but you threw in a bag of corn chips, the corn chips aren't going to have as long of a shelf life. So you'll either want to rotate out the whole meal by using it on a night that you need a quick dinner, or at least rotate out that bag of chips every so often, 6 months to a year, depending on how long your chips will stay good. So that's something to consider with these meals in a bag, but pretty much everyone I know who uses the meal in a bag concept, they do have them on the shelves for emergencies, but they also use them just on an everyday basis when they need a quick meal so that they keep them rotated. All right, let's get started and put together this dessert. I am also going to throw in some disposable aluminum muffin pans and some muffin pan liners. These actually came with liners, but I feel like these are more non-stick because I don't want to have to deal with non-stick spray or anything like that. So I'm going to throw these in with the dessert ingredients as well. All right, so for these bird's nests, I'm going to go ahead and melt the white chips and the peanut butter and the powdered sugar together in this pot. I'm a little nervous about keeping this heat low enough not to scorch this stuff because these burners are pretty powerful, even though this is an inexpensive one. You could do this in the microwave if you did have electricity, or if you have the type of microwave you can run off of a power station. But we're going to do it on the butane burner just to be really SHTF proof. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add the chips. And I'm going to go ahead and add this whole tube of peanut butter. All right, so I'm going to get this turned on and then down as low as I can get it. I'm going to add the powdered sugar after this has melted down some. Now the reason I'm using such a big pot, I could use a much smaller pot to melt this, but I am intending on mixing the noodles in right in the pot so I don't have to use an extra bowl. You know, I wonder if this could also be done in a crock pot if you did have electricity. I know I've seen crock pot candy that has almond bark, and I don't even remember what else it has in it. So, but I bet this might work in a crock pot if you are not in a grid down situation. So let me know if you've ever done a candy like this in the crock pot. I am going to stir this pretty constantly just to make sure that it melts evenly and nothing burns or sticks on the bottom. This is going pretty quickly despite the fact that I barely have this burner turned on at all. It is on, but not very high. I'm going to go ahead and add the powdered sugar right now. Remember, this was 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar. And at the point that this is almost all melted, almost all the chips are melted, you can usually take it right off the heat and just keep stirring, and it will keep melting until it's all smooth. That way there's less chance of it burning or scorching. Okay, this is pretty smooth. There is the occasional little bit of white chocolate that hasn't melted, but honestly, I just am getting impatient, and I don't think anybody's going to mind teeny little bits of white chocolate chips in their cookies. So I'm going to go ahead and add in these chow mein noodles and just stir it around until everything is coated. I did turn off the heat. All right, so now that this looks like it's pretty well blended, I'm just going to go ahead and scoop it. It says rounded tablespoons into the muffin pans. I'm going to see if I can't use my cookie scoop. Oh, good. Put it in there, and then we're going to make it into a little nest shape. And add some little eggs. And then we're going to let that chill. Or cool, harden. Look at this. How cute are these? This was no bake. It was pretty quick and easy. I did it with my emergency stove. And this would be a great project to do with a child or with children. And if you were in a grid down emergency, they can get pretty antsy, they can get pretty bored. So having something like this to occupy them would be really awesome. I'm going to go ahead and set these outside just to cool off and firm up. Those muffin tins did come with lids, which is really handy. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lids on, get them outside, cooling, chilling, and firming up. And our peanut butter bird's nest. These came out so cute, and they are delicious if you like peanut butter. If peanut butter fudge is your favorite thing, like it is mine, these are absolutely delicious. You can see I did some without the cupcake papers and some with the cupcake papers, and both of them came out of the pan okay. So you could do either one. It's a little bit easier to serve them individually without needing different plates if you have them in the little cups. You could probably even just mound these onto a tray or a sheet of wax paper and make them into a nest shape, and then, throw the eggs in them that way. But these came out super cute, and I'm very happy with it. And finally, let's put together a birthday bag in case you have a birthday or other event to celebrate. These also make great donation items. For the birthday bag, I do have a box of cake mix, and I'm using the Funfetti type just because it seems like the most birthday-ish to me, but you can use any flavor that you want. Any flavor of cake mix will work. I've got a can of soda here, a regular size can of soda. That's all we're going to need to mix with the cake mix to make the cake. I usually use lemon lime soda because it's what you most often see called for, but I don't think it matters. I've done it with other flavors as well. I think a cream soda would be fine, but you don't taste the soda, so it doesn't really matter. And next, of course, I've got a can of frosting. I'm using the Funfetti frosting because I like that it includes sprinkles, so you've got some decorations right with it. And then I have some other decorations. Of course, I have a pack of birthday candles, and you could also throw a lighter or a pack of matches right in with this if you wanted. And then I have this little package of birthday candy decorations that just says happy birthday. And once again, there's lots of different options for things like that. And then behind here, I do have a foil pan. This is a 9x13 disposable pan that we are going to bake the cake in. Now let's get started and get this in the bag. To start mixing our birthday cake, all I need is a mixing bowl. And to be perfectly honest, I have before, when we've been camping, actually opened the bag of cake mix and poured the soda right into the bag and mixed it up in the bag. It was messy, and I didn't really enjoy it, but it did work. So if you're in an emergency situation and you don't have a bowl or you don't want to dirty a lot of dishes, that might be an option. And then I just have to add the can of soda and mix. Okay, now this is all mixed and ready to go in the pan. And it's going to be okay if I don't even use any nonstick spray in this pan. Of course, if you have some available, you're welcome to use it, but I'm not going to use it because it's not in my bag. Okay, now this cake is ready to go in the oven. My oven's set at 350 degrees, and it's just going to bake like a normal birthday cake. Now, if you were in an emergency situation and you didn't have power, some alternate ways that you can bake a cake are a propane camp oven or a sun oven, or my favorite method is to use a cast iron Dutch oven with charcoal or campfire coals. And we do cakes like this in the Dutch oven all the time when we're camping. It's actually really fun. Of course, those options all are outdoor options, so they're really dependent upon the weather and the situation, you know, how conditions are outside. So if you're not able to bake outside, there is another alternative oven that's made for using indoors, and I will link that down in the description box if you want to check it out. Okay, the cake is done and it's all firm. Now it just needs to cool, and then we can frost it and decorate it. Okay, so now that the cake is all cool, all that remains to do is to frost it. Now we can go ahead and add on the sprinkles. And of course the candles. And this just happens to be my youngest daughter's 12th birthday, and she said she would like this for her birthday cake. So I'm going to put 12 candles on the cake. All right, I'll spare you all having to listen to me sing. Okay guys, now you've seen how I put together emergency meal kits for the holidays. I'll link the first episode with Thanksgiving and Christmas down below in case you missed it and you want to add those to your shelves as well. These shelf-stable emergency kits will never be quite the same as a spiral ham roasted in the oven all afternoon or a corned beef brisket simmered all day with fresh vegetables. But in an emergency situation, if it's all we had, we would be thankful for it. Some of the holiday meals are a bit more involved than my typical emergency meal kits. One dish meals are better for emergencies than multiple things that need to be cooked all separately. But for special occasions, we're usually willing to do a little bit more to make it work. Using insulated food containers can help keep some dishes warm while you prepare the rest of the meal if you're limited on burners and pans. If a dish needs baking, there's a lot of methods for baking without power, and I'll list them down below in the description. And many dishes that are supposed to be baked can be cooked in a pot on the stovetop as well. But also keep in mind, not every emergency situation involves a power outage. And there are more uses for these meals besides just emergencies. They can also be great blessings for people or families going through a hard time, for example. I hope you enjoyed these latest additions to my emergency meal kit collection. I'll link the whole playlist for you if you're interested in seeing more meals like this. If you have any ideas for other holiday meal kits, leave them in the comments down below so we might be able to feature them in a future video. I really wanted to do a Hoppin' John meal in a bag for New Year's, but to be perfectly honest, I've never even had Hoppin' John before, so I didn't even know where to begin with that. If you're familiar with this dish, give me your best tips down below. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a 3-leaf shamrock down in the comments and check out this playlist next for more meal ideas like this one. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.